Hi, I'm David Johnson, and this is Verse by Verse, a short podcast all about exploring the insights and lessons of the inspired Word of God. Today, we're looking at 1 John 5, verse 3. For this is the love of God, that we keep His commandments, and His commandments are not burdensome. A number of years ago, I regularly heard a radio commercial that always made me cringe. The announcer said, "Are you a model car? Plane or train? Enthusiast?" Eventually it became clear that it was an ad for a business that sold model cars and planes and trains, but the long pauses left me thinking, am I a model car? What kind of a question is that? I think of that commercial when I read this verse. When words are separated the wrong way, they give the wrong impression. Virtually every Bible translation punctuates 1 John 5:3 as if it were two sentences, two separate thoughts. It's as if John had said, "This is the love of God, that we keep His commandments. Period. Stop. End of thought." Then almost as an afterthought, he said, "Oh, by the way, His commandments are not burdensome. They may seem burdensome or picky or ritualistic or unfair at times, but I suppose they're really not." Is that really what he meant? When you take out that period between the thoughts, it tells us something very important. There are many people who claim to love God, but John is telling us what genuine love of God looks like. The love of God is not just words, but it's not just actions either. It says the love of God involves both what we do and the attitude we have while we're doing it. Have you ever asked someone, maybe your child or a coworker, to do something and they grumble and complain and whine about having to do it? Maybe they go ahead and do what you ask them to do, but it's obvious they're only doing it because they have no real choice. How does that make you feel? You know it's not voluntary. It's not something they do because they think it's the right thing to do. It's not something they do because they care about you and your wishes. They're only doing it because they feel they really don't have a choice. If you weren't there watching them and asking them to do it, they wouldn't do it at all. Rote obedience is not love. Grudging obedience is not love either. Genuine love involves action plus attitude. And this is true whether we're talking about love toward God or loving our mate or loving our children. The other side of that behavior is true too. If you ask someone to do something and they do it eagerly, cheerfully, faithfully, you not only appreciate what they did, but the attitude they had in doing it as well. So does God. And there's one more important concept in this verse too. Have you ever thought that any of God's commandments are burdensome? As I was growing up, I often heard people say that keeping the Sabbath was a burden. For a long time, I assumed they knew what they were talking about, until I began keeping the Sabbath. I found out that John was right, and they were wrong. Loving God involves a positive, cheerful, faithful response to what He asks us to do. No excuses, no grumbling, no hesitating. And when we approach it that way, we quickly learn that John was right, and our relationship with God takes on a new, brighter, happier dimension as well. Instead of seeing His commandments as burdens to be borne, we see them as gifts to be appreciated.
Verse by Verse is a companion podcast to the Daily Bible Verse blog, which you can find on the Life, Hope, and Truth Learning Center. Check out the show notes for more.